What's up? How you doing? Here we are, beautiful night tonight, and it's Sunday night, the end of the weekend. I don't know what time it is. The time right now, 11:05 in the p.m. Sunday, September the 28th. September's almost gone. We're already in fall time. Halloween coming. So I have Canadian Dry ginger ale. Canadian Dry is the best ginger ale. They have the other companies that make ginger ale, but they're not as good, in my opinion. For me, other people, they may like those better. Cup of ice. Yeah, I appreciate Canadian Dry. Get that. Let it get cold for a moment. Another weekend come and gone. They fly by. You know, I get excited. I'm like, all right, it's Friday. And then before I know it, it's Saturday. And then I go, okay, we got Sunday coming up. And then all of a sudden, Sunday's over. Refreshing, delicious. Very good. So I'm going to tell a story. I'm going to tell a story that I've told before, but it's one of those things that I keep thinking about every once in a while. It's not a daily thing. I may think about it once every few months, but it pops into my head. So when I was a kid, myself and I, with my parents, we went to it was like a pond area, recreational center. You know, it was like a lot of people walking around the pond. It's like 1.3 miles around to do the full circle. And my parents were up on the grass way back, and they had opened up a blanket and they were chilling out. My mother was asleep. So back then they allowed you, wander around when you were little, and I was little. So there was a show I was a huge fan of called The Odd Couple. The Odd Couple starring Tony Randall and what's the other guy there? I want to say Quincy, but Tony Randall, and he played Oscar Madison. Jack Klugman. And I don't know why that show spoke to me. It was a theme song mostly, the opening. Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. So that's the thing where his wife tells him to leave. I'm talking about Tony Randall's character, Felix. And then she opens up the door again and hands him the pot, or the pan, actually, the pan. And he leaves and he shows up at his friend's house or apartment, Oscar Madison. And it was a combination of the theme and New York and all of that. And I was like, okay, this is pretty much what happens to you when, you become an adult. And, back then when you were a kid, you would think an adult and the way they were that age was like, forever away. So that theme song, music is very powerful to me. Brings out the emotion. But anyway, when I hear that even now, it brings me back to when I was a kid watching that in my room. I would be on my bed and I'd hear that theme song, and I don't know what it was. It was like, this is what happens when you get older. This is the life you lead. You become a guy that lives in an apartment in the middle of the city. So I was a big fan of that show. Check Klugman. let the LAPD go. Good stuff. And so we're back now at the pond where I started off the story. And I walk away from my parents, and I'm doing, I'm going to do the walk around. And I'm little. So I get to the corner where it curves to the left, and all of a sudden, now there's a bunch of people. There's a walkway that goes around, pavement, trail. It's wide, maybe like 15 feet wide. There's another one. Busy night. LAPD. They're just going around. So anyway, all of a sudden, there's a guy next to me, kind of hippie-ish looking. Has long, dirty blonde, brown, stringy hair. Almost looks like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. That body style. Spindly. And he's next to me, and I felt like a little shake of the ground, like an earthquake. It's my imagination. I did that. I don't know. You could have an earthquake any second. I'd be talking in nice and stable, and all of a sudden, I'll be, So anyway, guy's next to me looks like he's about, the way I'm imagining him now, like maybe mid-30s, mid to late 30s, somewhere in there. And as he's standing next to me, a big Cadillac, Brom Fleetwood, one of those big 70s Cadillacs, but this was even bigger. This is the one with the extended back. So it's like a limo almost. And it pulls up because the street is like maybe 30 feet away. The street's up here. And hits the brakes, does a skid thing, and I look, door opens up, and I hear the guy, he goes, "Stay right there." He's talking to the guy next to me. And I look at him, and I go, "Wait a minute." I go, "That's Tony Randall." I'm not making that up. 100% sure that was Tony Randall. I for years, I struggled with it, but everything matched. His face, everything, the voice, everything. And so anyway, the guy sees him when he tells him to stop, and come back to him, and he runs into the pond, starts swimming in I go, where's he gonna go? So the Tony Randall looking guy, which I think it was Tony Randall, sends another guy from inside. He goes, "Go get him." And I think it was two guys he sent. He sends them in there, and they go in the water all wet, and they grab him, they pull him out, and they shove him in the car, they shut the doors, and they leave. And when they left like it was a scene from a movie. They hit the gas hard, and the tires spun out of there. And I was watching this, I go, I just saw Tony Randall pull a guy into his car and leave. Now, I told this story before, and I think I've said it a couple of times before, but years had gone by, and hear that radio. And anyway, years had gone by, and Tony Randall was still alive, and I kept saying, I gotta write a letter to his agent and ask if that was him. I gotta do it before he dies, because he was getting up there in age. So I sat down and I wrote a letter. He was still alive at the time, and I mailed it, and I never got a response. Obviously, well, they can see, that was me. I grabbed the guy out of the pond and put him in my Cadillac and took off. We beat the crap out of him. But when I tell you that it looked like Tony Randall, I don't mean it looked like, I mean it was exactly like him. Exactly, where I'm telling you that was him. Now, I don't know who can verify, if anybody knew Tony Randall well enough to say, yeah, he did drive around a Cadillac. There was a guy one time, and they were looking for him, and they did drag him out of the pond. There's got to be somebody who knows this story. But if I were a betting man, which I am not, I would bet $1 million that was Tony Randall. And I'll tell you, it would be the equivalent, because I was also a huge fan at the time of the $6 Million Man show. But imagine I'm walking around the pond, and all of a sudden a Cadillac pulls up, and Lee Majors sticks his head out and tells the guy, come here. You don't think I would recognize Lee Majors? And I was a huge fan of The Odd Couple, and the voice, the face, the mannerisms, everything matched Tony Randall. He even had a suit on. So, I don't know, I wish I knew somebody who was friends with him but was a lot younger and knew about this story that could verify it, because it's been driving me crazy for years. I was little when this happened. I remember it happened yesterday. Now, if it wasn't Tony Randall, there's always that possibility. This guy was a clone. A clone. I mean, if in those days, you got to remember, iPhones did not exist. So if this happened today, there would be 50 angles that you could see it from, because everybody would have their phone out videotaping it. But I remember that I was walking around by myself, and there was the guy next to me, and he kind of looked like Shaggy, but his hair was longer. And he did a double take, oh, they found me. And he spun around and he ran into the pond. And he got in maybe 15 feet. And then Tony Randall told the other guys, go get him. It was I'm telling you, out of a movie. They went and grabbed him. I remember they grabbed him nice and hard, and then they tossed him in the car. It's get your ass in there. And then they sped off, like a Starsky and Hutch, scene where they speed off like that. So yeah, I always think about that, like I said, not every day, but every so often it pops into my mind, and I go, that was him. There's no doubt in my mind that was Tony Randall. This is not some people say, oh, I saw somebody who looked like Bill Bixby, but it really wasn't. This guy didn't look like Tony Randall. This was Tony Randall, but like I said, I don't know 100% because I don't know. But it always it makes me curious to find out the truth. Was it him or not? There's got to be somebody from those days who was maybe in their 20s and is still alive today, that if they ever saw this video, they would say, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. That was Tony Randall. But it was one of those nice Cadillacs, the kind that were like a mob boss would drive. It was like the extended version where you have the regular big Cadillac, the Fleetwood, the Brom, the big ones. But then it had that extra window on the back, so it had an extension. And yeah, I remember the guy was next to me, and then Tony Randall opened up and he yelled at him to come to him. And the guy, he looked scared. I mean, he looked like they were going to beat him up. And so he spun around, he ran into the pond. And I go, yeah, you're not gonna get that far. But I didn't even think that they would go after him in there. I thought they would just watch him. And Tony Randall said, go get him. And they went and they grabbed him. But I would love to know if that was him. I did write a letter, never received a response. I sent it to his agent. Somehow I found out who the agent was, and I sent it there asking if they could verify. But it's one of those, you're not going to verify that. What are you going to say? Yeah, that was him. Guy owed him money, and he pulled him in there, and they smoothed them out. Maybe if I asked him, hey, one time I was Christmas shopping, and I saw Tony Randall buy a Christmas tree. Was that really him? And name the neighborhood, and they would say, yeah, that was him. That you would admit to. But in a situation where you grab a guy like that and shove him in your car and drive off in an angry manner, nobody's going to admit to that. But, statute of limitations by now has expired many times. But I I love that show. It's the theme more than anything, but everything about it, where they lived, the opening, scenes of the credits with the theme song playing, where he's trying to help the old lady cross the street and she, bashes him with her purse. It's like, oh. You get the other guy throws a cigar down. Tony Randall, Oscar Madison, cigar goes down. Tony Randall, his umbrella. It's like bugs. Jabs into the cigar, and he's like, "What are you doing?" But I don't know. It's hard to describe, but it was almost like I was coming into the world, and I was starting to question, like, where are we? I was one of those people that, when I got to a certain age, 5, 4, whatever, I was always looking around saying, where am I? What is this place that I've arrived? Like, what is this? And to this day, I say the same thing, because we don't know. We don't know. I get into these moods. Sometimes I'm looking out into the universe and I'm in a dark area. And I think to myself, where did all this stuff come from? Like, why is it here? And I always, used to think when I was a kid, imagine if there was nothing. And why is there something? I mean, even if you're, not thinking about this all the time, like me, there's got to be times where you're kind of looking around and going, where are we? What's going on here? It's like we're inside of a thing called the universe. And the weird thing about that is that some scientists think it's infinite, some think it's finite. Either way, it's strange. It's strange that you could have this thing called the universe that keeps going on and on forever. That the human mind cannot wrap itself around that concept. And then the other concept where it's not infinite, but it's just big. That's weird too, because what happens when you reach the end of that? What's after that? And after that, and after that, and after that. The after that thing gets me. Because the universe is the ultimate. You always think about what comes after, what's beyond that. And it can't be nothing. I mean, you gotta stop and bump into something. Like on Earth, you got, you're in your room. After that, you get the hallway. After that, you may have a dining room. After that, you have the walls of the house. Then you have your property. Well, you keep going. Get the city, get the state, the country, the planet. Pull further out, solar system. Further out, the galaxy. Right? Keep going. The local group, local cluster. Keep going and going and going and going. Eventually, you have the universe. Well, I mean, no matter how big it is, it's got to be held inside of something. And then you get that something, and you're like, what is that held inside of? What is that expanding into? Even if it's empty space. Let's say this is the entire universe. This thing here. Okay, let's get the stuff outside of it. Here we know it's my backyard, but it's one of those things that I keep thinking about it, trying to find an answer, and I know there's no answer, but I just think about that question. What is the universe held inside of? What is it expanding into? What's beyond the observable horizon? I suspect there's more universe, but what's beyond that? They say galaxies are moving away from each other because the universe is expanding. That doesn't make sense either. How come the gravitational pull? Okay, so back up a little bit here. Andromeda, which is about 2.5 million light years from here. That one, they say, some scientists say it's not going to happen, but some say it is. They say that the gravitational pull from Milky Way and Andromeda, they're pulling each other, and eventually, in, I don't know, millions, billions of years, they're gonna blend into one big galaxy. And how come those aren't going apart? I mean, everything else is spreading apart, but those two are coming together. That doesn't make sense. So it's very strange, and the more we find out, the stranger it gets. And we are the universe. We're just a different form. We're alive, but we are the universe. We're not outside of the universe. We're nothing beyond it. We are the universe come to life. So every time I go to space.com or SETI or something like that, and I see something new, I'm like, this is some crazy stuff. And every time we get better technology, the bigger the universe gets, or at least our understanding of it. Delicious. Yeah, they used to think the universe was like the earth, the sun, and that was it, a long time ago. Then they said, wait a minute, there's little things in the sky twinkling, and they thought those were like objects that were like maybe 10 by 10 feet, just floating in space. They didn't know what those were. They didn't know that they had no idea that those were suns. We know that for sure. Then they said, wait a minute, those are not little things, those are huge things, those are stars. So they go, okay, now we know that. And then they saw something in the distance. They thought it was a cluster of stars, and somebody said, no, I think that's a separate galaxy. And everybody was like, we're going to stone you if you say that again. And he goes, well, it's the truth, I think it's another galaxy. And now we know that the universe is just galaxy after galaxy after galaxy. So those are like miniature universes. Because originally they thought it was just the sun and us. They thought it was kind of like a globe, where you shake it and it snows inside. And they thought, we were living inside a dome. And the sun was here and it was going around the dome. And there was a being from outside watching everything. So they came up with these stories. And then they realized, no, it's not how it goes. It's a solar system with other planets and the sun is in the center, and the planets go around the sun in a motion that also goes around the galaxy. So everything's going around everything else. And then they discovered get more galaxies, and I bet you anything in the future somehow they're going to figure out that there's even more universes, which that's even weird. I mean, imagine if there's more universes, they're all infinite in size, or they're finite in size, but there's an infinite amount of them, or they're infinite amounts and they're infinite in size. But like I said, either way, where did the empty space come from that holds these things inside of it? And what comes after the empty space? Nobody knows the answer. If you go on YouTube and you type that in, you'll get some guy comes in there with confusing language, and he'll throw all these things at you, and it means absolutely nothing because he or she, they don't know what they're talking about, so they're making it up. They're making it up. They don't know what's beyond the universe. They say, oh, the universe is all there is, but you don't know that. You're making it up. Just say you don't know. This highly recommend Canadian Dry. Canadian Dry. It's just Canada Dry. I don't know Canadian in here, but good stuff. I will say that I love, I don't have it that often, but Mexican Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola from Mexico. Delicious. Comes in glass. Nothing plastic. and it has cane sugar, and it just tastes so much better. And a Coca-Cola's lying when they say there's no difference. I can tell you with 100% certainty which one is which. If you put Mexican Coke and then you put the Coke we have here side by side, same glass, same amount of ice, and you can even blindfold me, I will take a sip and I will tell you which one is the Mexican Coke. Mexican Coke is 100 times better. I don't know why these American companies have not realized that. They give the Mexican Coke much better flavor. Why can't they do that here? They give us that crappy stuff here. And if you go to Europe, they have the exact same kind of Coke there, even though it's made in Europe. I don't know which country makes it there, but here we get the high corn syrup, and I think that does make a difference in the flavor. Refreshing. Yeah, sometimes I say, you know what, it hasn't happened while, in modern times, but it may, when we experience a catastrophe that is external coming towards us, like a major asteroid hitting us. Imagine like I'm talking here and this asteroid was not detected and it just slams into, the Black Sea or somewhere. Just picking a random place. I don't want to pick a place and offend anybody thinking it's going to hit there. I just randomly picking places. It could be anywhere. It could be Antarctica. But imagine you're here quietly talking, making a video, and all of a sudden a big asteroid the size of Manhattan hits somewhere on the planet, traveling at 100,000 miles per hour, slams into the planet with force that is equivalent to all the nuclear bombs we have on this planet. I mean, it's just, and you know what, I think about it, I go, Manhattan compared to the planet is not that big, but if you're going fast enough, it makes a huge difference. You would think the planet would be able to take that no problem, but if you have something, say, the size of Mount Everest, traveling at 100,000 miles per hour, and it slams into the equator. Oh, we lost the light there. Hits the equator, the whole planet will feel it. It'll send dust into the atmosphere. It'll cover up the sun. You'll get no sun coming in for a long time. And that's another thing I understand. Why won't that dust settle down fast? I mean, you go in a room and you take some dust, sawdust or something. It comes back down within, seconds. So let's say it's not seconds, let's say it's hours. Why would it take more than that? A lot of things don't make sense, but yeah, one day it's going to happen. They're going to miss it. They're going to be like, oh, we have all the technology, it's keeping an eye out, but maybe this thing sneaks in from the backside and nobody notices it. And let's say even if they notice it, they can't do anything, so they say don't mention it to the public. And now, since I'm on the topic of that kind of stuff, I will mention Tucker Carlson. I don't know what's going on with this guy, but he claims that he knows that those, remember a while back that these pilots, they were saying, these little bugs, man, they were saying that they see objects flying, like off the coast of San Diego or something, at tremendous speeds, go right by, it'll dip down, it'll come back up again, and they say they defy the laws of physics. And now Tucker Carlson is going around telling, people that he believes that these are supernatural beings doing this. I don't know. I mean, that sounds a little bit ridiculous, but if you have the evidence, present it and let us see what you know. He says he knows people in certain areas that are high up and they told him this. I don't know. I find that, I mean, there are people that have said that they've debunked these things, that these are actually F-16s or whatever, some kind of fighter plane, and what you're seeing is the backside of it, and it's doing this because you're seeing it from the back. It looks like some kind of, unidentified flying object, but in actuality it's one of ours. Or it could be something like, one time they were saying that it was a balloon floating down below, and because they zoomed in on it, it gives the appearance that it's going really rapid, like really rapidly fast. I don't even know if you can do that, but it's going really fast. And if you know anything about cameras, if you have a camera and you zoom in on an object that's traveling at like 30 miles an hour, and you can keep a steady focus on it, it looks like it's going a lot faster. But as far as it being supernatural beings, I mean, like, where'd you come up with that? Who told you that? I mean, and how do they know that it's supernatural beings doing this? And I think a lot of people, they get carried away if there's money to be made. Like if you have a podcast and you bring in this sensational stuff, the money makes you stop thinking logically. Okay, let's say it's supernatural beings. Where did you come up with this concept? What's the evidence that supports this? I mean, you just can't come up with stuff and say, oh, this is what it is because I feel it that way. Because then I could say anything too. I could say, make it up, whatever. And these supernatural beings, this is what they do for fun. Come here, mess around in the ocean, fly near military aircraft, but just play hide and seek with us. Believe me, I would love it to be true that something is visiting us. But so far I haven't seen anything that's believable. And you don't want to be believing just anything. You should require proof. Anyway, I'm gonna go and wrap up the night. 11:38, and I don't know, we'll do it again later, some other day. That's it for now. Ciao.